Today we have 7 different ways to color the frosted forest tree. My name is Karen Slowinski. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. I live in Akron, Ohio. And this is going to be a little bit different of a video because I'm not going to be showing you a whole lot of different cards, but I am going to show you different ways that we're going to color, whoops, that's the back side. We're going to color this tree. So this is the deciduous tree. This is part of the Frosted Forest bundle. So not only is there the stamp set and the dies, but there are also decorative masks or stencils. And so we're going to be using those for some of the trees that we're going to color, but we're going to use some other techniques. I think you're going to really be surprised at some of these. Some of them are even new to me, and I really love how these all came out. So I'm going to show you a card, and we're going to show what it looks like with one card with all of these 7 different trees on it. So it's, like I said, it's a little bit different, but it's more of a technique video. I think you're gonna really love it. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing to my channel, giving me a thumbs up, leaving me comments. I really do love reading those. So let's get this hammer turned around and we're gonna begin making our 7 different colored trees. Before we begin our coloring, let's look at the bundle. So this is the Frosted Forest stamp set. As you can see, there are 2 evergreen trees and 1 deciduous tree. It has some very nice sayings. And then it comes with some dies. I already have this large tree out. As you can see, there's quite a few dies. I really like these bare trees, and it really makes a beautiful scene. And then you've got a couple for the evergreens, and then you could do your greenery on the tree like this. And then you've got a couple dies for the birds. And then it comes with some stencils or decorative masks. So these are the ones that we're going to be using. These are for the deciduous tree, and then there are 3 more for the evergreen trees. So that is the basics of this bundle. So I'm going to set the die aside because we don't need that until the end. So we're going to start with the most basic. So what I have done is I've stamped my trees ahead of time, and then I'm going to show you how we use our stencils. So the stencils are all numbered up here in the corner. So you can see that is number 1, and then we've got 2 and 3. So it really makes it easy to know which one you're using. And it also has this little notch, so that's really handy. So when you put this on, you're going to line up and you're going to get your tree bits. And then when you get it all in place, you're going to use this little notch. So I'm just going to grab a pen, and we are going to make this little notch right there. That'll help you when you're lining up the other ones. So we're going to start with blending brushes. I'm going to do the trunk of the tree. So I'm using pecan pie. I've tried to use the same colors pretty much throughout so that you can see what each one looks like in the most similar fashion. You can't always do that because some of the colors don't transition to all the different types of coloring tools. And then you're going to swirl around. You're going to want to be gentle because there are very delicate pieces around this tree trunk, and you're going to want to swirl in both directions. You're just going to want to go ahead and layer your color on, and it's always better to start with darker. You can always, or excuse me, start with lighter. You can always go darker. And so, for instance, if I wanted a little bit darker at this knot, I can add a little bit more. But there, that looks pretty good. And I take that off, and I've got my tree trunk colored. So then I'm going to switch to Granny Apple Green and another blending brush. So I'm going to take my second layer, and this layer does a lot of the tree. And I didn't tape this piece down, so hopefully I did not move it so much, but you can kind of see where it was. And it's covering up a lot of the tree bits. So I may have moved it a tiny bit, but that looks pretty good. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pick up some color, and I'm going to swirl. I'm going to swirl in both directions. And this one really has some very fine stencil pieces. So you want to be very careful and just go very gently. So we're going to add our color down. And again, I'm swirling both directions. I'm keeping this fairly light. because we're going to add our our garden green as our final layer. And if I were doing this, just not in the video, I probably would have taped this down so it wouldn't have moved. And then I'm going to switch to my third stencil. Okay. And this one is going to be in my garden green. So I'm going to get that one out of the way, open up garden, and then this is going to give you the boughs. Okay, so this one is going to go right about like that. Okay, and this is going to give you the depth. And there aren't a lot of openings for this one, so this one's going to go pretty fast. And just like we did before, we're going to start out lightly, and then we're going to add color. All right, there is our first coloring. So this is with blending brushes. So I'm going to set those aside. Here, let's look at this a little bit closer. So these are using the masks and blending brushes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to color all of them, and then I'm going to pause the video, cut them out, and then show you how we're going to use this on a card. Okay, so that's first technique. Let me grab my second one. Our second technique, we are going to be using sponge daubers. So we're going to go back and get our first layer. And this time I think I will tape this down in place just a little bit to hold it. So I'm going to just use a piece of Scotch tape. Okay. That way it'll help it not move. And I can see that I have put it in a little bit different place than I had my first one, but that's okay. I'm just going to make another mark with my pen. And I'm just going to put a 2 here because that's my second one. And then we're going to use the same 3 colors, and we're going to use sponge daubers. Now, what I liked about sponge daubers is that they give you a very, I guess, a softer look. It's not quite as intense as using the blending brushes. And all you're doing is pouncing on your stencil here. And just like you did with blending brushes, you can add some darker color where you want it just by sponging it more. But it's just going, you know, a pouncing motion. So I'm thinking that looks pretty good. We're switching over now. Take this stencil off, and we're going to go back to this one. This is our Granny Apple Green. That looks very good. So open up a Granny. I do have a sponge dauber for all my colors, and then I just label them. Unless they're one of the newer ones like Pecan Pie, and I haven't labeled that one yet. And so we're just gonna pounce on this one. And as you can see, the color goes down just a little bit lighter. It's not as intense as the blending brush. And also, because it is this little sponge, you can get a little bit more texture. So the blending brushes is a very smooth coloring technique. But because this has that spongy round dome to it, you do get a little bit of that texture to it, which is kind of fun too. Just get a little here. I think that looks pretty good. Lift that off. And then we're going to switch to our final color. Once again, it is Garden Green. Did you know that Garden Green, I think, is one of our original Stampin' Up! Colors? If I'm not mistaken. I had this from way back when. So then I'm going to just line this one up. And put down just a little bit. And then we're going to add our deep color. I had a lot of fun when I was planning this video. I didn't realize just how many different coloring techniques I would end up with. And as I thought I was done, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I could do this. So that's how I ended up with 7 of them. So this is our second number card, again, using the masks and a sponge dauber. So as you can see, it is got a little bit of that sponge texture to it, and it is a little bit softer than this one, which has the blending brushes. All right, on to our third one. So again, we are going to be using our masks, but this time I'm going to be using Stampin' Write markers. Now I haven't cleaned this off. If I were, to clean this off and put it away, I would just run it under water in the sink. But since we're using all the same colors, I'm not cleaning it off in between. So again, I'm going to just go ahead and give this a little bit of a tape to hold it into place. And for this time, I'm going to use my Stampin' Write markers in those same colors, and I'm going to use the brush tip end. So these have two ends. This has the small line and this has the fatter line. We're going to be using this brush tip end, and I'm going to be applying color all around the openings of the stencil. So this is one of the newer techniques that I didn't really know about, and I had seen somebody do it, and so I'm like, I have to give that a try. So color this up, and then I have just a dry brush. Now I did try this with my water painters. I tried it with my wider brush that is just a flat brush, but it was a little bit too separated, and I'm going to just take that color and just brush it onto my white cardstock underneath. So all I'm doing is moving that color off and onto the cardstock. And this is going to give you yet another texture. All right, that looks pretty good. Switching over. Now I do have to clean off my brush. And now I'm switching to my Granny Apple Green. Oh, I don't want the stamp pad. I want my markers. Habit is to going back to what we're used to doing. So here I'm just coloring with my marker, making sure I get all these little bits. Okay. And make sure I have enough of the green all around. Okay. And put that cover back on that one. And get that lined up. Once again, I have that, and then I'm just going to take my brush now. I can tell that my brush has separated a little bit because I did kind of wash it off a little bit, so I didn't mix the colors. It is better with a dry brush, entirely dry, so that you don't get these little separations of lines. But yet, I know the very first time that I had done this, I got a little bit of these wispy lines, and it was still cool. It's just a different look because it is a little bit more directional with all the brush strokes. And then you just keep pulling the color on. So this one, again, is a little bit softer of a color saturation. It's not quite as deep. But I kind of like it with the little brush strokes because it does look a little bit more textured like the green leaves. And then let's get our garden green. And we're going to apply our color onto this. And then I didn't color or clean my brush off between because this is still green, so that is going to be fine. And get that lined up. Okay, and then take my brush to get these colors. And this doesn't get quite as distinct, I guess, if you will, with some of the other techniques, but it still gets the color on there. Okay. And there we have that one. So let's lift that up so you can see that. So you see a little bit of the brush strokes, but I think it looks pretty cool. So that is technique number 3. All right, number 4 is with watercolor pencils. So for this one, we are not using the stencils at all. And I am just going to grab my watercolor pencils. Okay, I've got, so for this one, I did have a granny apple green and a garden green. So that was good. I did not have a pecan pie, but I have an early espresso, and then I grabbed a crushed curry so I could add a little bit of lightness to it. So we're just going to go ahead and use our colors. So I'm going to start with my early espresso. And this, if you've never used our watercolor pencils, you don't have to be super precise with them, because you're going to use a blending pen to kind of smooth out the color. So just put a little bit of color on here. Don't worry about being perfect. And we're just going to color our tree trunk. All right, I think that looks pretty good. Gonna add a little of my crushed curry. This will give it a little bit of warmth. So I'm adding my crushed curry before I blend it. That way when I use my blending pen, it will blend those colors together. Okay, so then the blending pen is just going to smooth it out. This is so magical. I love using a blending pen. Okay, I'm just gonna smooth out those two colors together. Okay, and then I just wipe off the excess color. And now we're gonna use our greens. So I'm gonna put this one away, and I'm just layering color. And like I said, you can just swirl it on there. And sometimes it's a little bit hard to tell exactly where to go because you don't have that stencil to guide you. And so you just kind of go where you think these leaves are. And there might be some gaps, so we're going to leave a little bit of gap. Okay. Adding this color here. And this is going to go up into this space. Okay, and this gets color down in here. I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap there. And just like I did before, I'm going to add my darker green. Where did that one go? Oh, it's right here. And then I'm going to add just kind of where I want to have a little more depth. And it won't necessarily match up with my stencil where the darker green is, but nobody's going to know that. So you just put your dark green wherever you want. And swirl it in. Okay. And this is going to give you another very soft look. So as you blend that color in, look how pretty that looks. Coloring pencils are great. These are good tools to take on the go, you know, because they're not a lot of bulk. And there are 2 different packs of the watercolor pencils. So you can get a nice variety of colors. And then the blender pens come in a pack of 3. And these last a very long time. I can't even tell you when I bought this one, but I have had it for probably at least 3 or 4 years, if not longer. So they do last a good long time. So you just blend this together, get all those beautiful colors going. And there we have that. And then I'm just taking a piece of scrap paper over there and coloring off what is on this pen. So this is what the watercolor pencils look like. Okay, now we're going to go on to Stampin Blends. So for this one, I did not have a garden green. So we'll start with our pecan pie. So I'm going to go with both the light and the dark shades for this one. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add my colors. Give it a little bit more depth with that knot. And then I'm going to go back in with the darker one and add a little bit more detail. And I do like to use the bullet end this end with this. You could use the other one. It's kind of up to you. Most of the time, I would say I use the bullet tip. I like the fine control. Okay, so add some of the details here. It's really kind of nice. You've got these little bit of lines that come in the stamp set, and that helps you give the details. Okay, and then I do have Granny Apple Green, so I've got both of the light and the dark. So I'm just going to go ahead and add color. I'm going to add a lot of the light because the nice thing about the blends is that you can keep adding and layering colors. So I'm not totally filling it in. I'm making a little bit more sketchy with my strokes. Mostly filling it in, but not entirely. Okay, so I'm just going to keep coloring. I may speed up the video, so. Okay, here I am. I'm just about done. And all I did was go back after I added my light old olive. I'm going back with my light Granny Apple Green, and I'm just kind of giving it a little bit more blend just to make it a little bit more smooth. So this is what this one looks like. All right, now we're switching to our 6th technique, and this is watercolors. So for this, what you're going to need are some of your stamp pads. I'm going to start again with my pecan pie. And if you can't get color in the lid, which sometimes is hard to do, I do like to use a block. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit of color on a block. Okay, make sure your block is clean. And then grab your water painter. And even though there is water in here, I do like to use water from a cup or a mug. I find I get better control when I can just dip my water. And this is the Fluid 100 watercolor paper, and I've stamped it with Stays On because Stays On is a water resistant. So you can stamp it with Stays On and then color it, and you're not going to get bleeding. If you were to use Memento, you would get bleeding. So I'm just going to apply my color. All right, and then you can add, more color to get a depth of the brown. So here I might as well just get a very nice light wash. And as you can see, as I grab a little bit more of my ink, you can get deeper. I really love doing watercolor with our inks. It's great because we've got all of the paper that matches, and our inks are so beautiful. So I do quite a bit with watercolor and our inks. And sometimes I use re-inkers, but a lot of times I just use the ink from the stamp pad, just like I showed you here. Oh, I almost forgot these top little branches here. Okay, add a little bit. Okay. Let's make some of these just a little bit darker. If you go out of the lines, that's fine. It is watercolor. Okay. Clean that off. Then I need my granny apple green and my garden green. So I'm going to take a larger block and I'm going to pick up garden green on one end and my granny apple on the other. So I've got both of them ready to go. Get those closed up. And we are going to dab in color pretty much just like we did when we were doing, you know, the pencils, or even with the, the blends, where you're just going to, you know, be placing your color. It doesn't have to be just like the stencils were, but we're just adding our color into the trees. Okay. And again, I will probably speed this video up so that you don't have to watch this in real time. All right, I think that's good. It's one of the things with watercolor. You can just keep playing and playing and playing. But there is my tree with the watercolor. So we have to set that aside so it can dry. All right, I have one last technique for you. So for this one, we do have to use the stencils for our tree trunk. So I'm just going to get that lined up, and I'm just going to do that. I'm going to grab my pecan pie ink, and I'm going to color this. Get that lined up. Okay. I think I was off a little bit there. Okay. I did go out of the line a little bit, but I think that'll be forgiving. So this next technique is using a shimmery embossing paste. So I don't know if you've ever used it, but this is really fun, and you don't need very much of it. So it comes in this container. I don't know if it helps to keep it in the plastic bag, but I do. And then we need our silicone craft sheet. Let's see where mine went. I had everything sitting out, but I've put everything and covered it up. So you're going to need the silicone craft sheet. And then we need our palette knives. So I've got a couple of the different ones. So I'm going to start with this pointy one. The other thing I like to recommend is having a basin of water nearby, because this dries very quickly. So you do not want it to get stuck on there. So I'm going to grab just a little bit of paste. It doesn't take very much. So I'm going to put that on, and I'm going to cover this right up right away. I don't want any chance of that getting dry. And then I'm going to take a little bit of my Granny Apple Green re-inker, and I'm going to mix that with my paste. So it doesn't take a lot. I just put a tiny drop. So I'm going to color this paste. So this is a beautiful white shimmery paste as it is, but we can make it any color we want by mixing it with our re-inkers. So, okay. So that is mixed, ready to go. And I'm going to grab my stencil. So let's go ahead and put this one down. And I'm going to cover up this. Okay, and I'm going to apply. I'm going to have to move this paste a little bit. Okay, this, I'm going to just apply this paste on here. And this is probably where I'm going to switch to my other tool. Okay, so this helps me to spread it a little bit better. So as you can see, a little bit goes a long way. You're going to want to get in all those crevices. Okay, and then scrape off any of the excess. Okay, now I'm going to just lift this straight up. And this is going right into my basin of water so that it won't get hardened on there. And this is the tree. Now this is only with that first layer. If you're going to add your second layer, then you need to let this dry a little bit so that you can add your second layer. And I'm going to show you one that I added a second layer. So I added a little granny apple green, and here I have that second layer on there. So you can see what it looks like with just the one layer and then with the two layers. I think I almost like this one better, but I wanted to show you both. So this is the one that I'll cut out and put into my end piece, but actually I probably cut out both so you can see them. So with this paste here, I can go ahead and add my darker green to this, color that, and apply it using that last stencil. But for now, I am going to stop. I'm going to let everything dry completely. I'm going to pause the video, then I'm going to cut everything out, and then we're going to show you exactly what all of these different coloring techniques look like in a card. So I'll be back in just a few. All right, this is the die that I used to cut out all my trees. So let's look at them. So let's go from the last to the first. So this is the tree that I had done as my sample with both shades of the Shimmery paste colored, and this is the one with just the lighter shade of the Granny Apple Green. So let me put those there. This one is, well, actually I had them in the right order. So the next one is, this is using the water painter and using our blocks to pick up colored ink. So we are working on watercolor paper, and we're adding our color that way. The next one is with Stampin Blends. So I've just used Granny Apple Green light and dark. I did the Pecan Pie light and dark, and then I did light old olive because we didn't have a garden green. So then the next one is using the Watercolor Pencils. Make sure I'm still in the frame right here. So that is using all the same colors, the Watercolor Pencils. The next is we used our masks, and we did use the Stampin' Right markers to color on the masks, and then a dry brush to brush them onto our tree. And then this one is using sponge daubers with the masks, and so you get a very soft look. And then this last one is just using blending brushes and the mask, and you get a little bit more of a crisp line. So those are the 7 ways that we can color our trees. So here I'm going to stack them up in the order that we did them, and then I'm going to show you the card. So I made a very simple card. I love this one because it's great for masculine birthdays. And this has some of the neutral 6x6 inch designer series paper. And I just put a 2.5 by 5.5 piece on the side. I cut out one of the birds. So this is the bird from the stamp set right there. And I colored it with smoky slate gray. So to finish this card, all I would do is pop the tree up with some dimensionals. So here is the first one, and I want you to vote in the comments. So this is number 1. This would be number 2. And then we have our number 3, which was the Stampin' Right markers. And number 4, which is our watercolor pencils. Okay, that's a little bit bent. This next one is using our Stampin Blends. This one is our watercolor paper. Okay, and then the last one, we've got 2 variations. So I forgot to tell you the numbers. This is number 7A. So this is the paste with just the 1 color. And then this is the paste with 2 colors. So this would be 7B. So I want you to go ahead and vote in your comments. So again, 7B and 7. And then we're going to go backwards. This is number 6. Number 5, which is Stampin Blends. Number 4, the watercolor pencils. Number 3, the Stampin' Write markers and a dry brush. Number 2, the sponge daubers. And number 1, which is just our blending brushes. And I will pick one of these. I'm probably just going to pick a random one, and I will actually stick it down with dimensionals and show that in my blog, which is thepowerofacard.blogspot.com. And that's what I did for the inside. So that is from Simply Said, and this again is from the Frosted Forest. So I hope that you have really liked this video. Like I said, it is something different, but it really is showing you the techniques of how you can color these great trees, and I hope you've learned something. So please give me a thumbs up, share this with your crafting friends, leave me a comment again with your favorite and anything else that you'd like to tell me. I really appreciate you watching my videos. Thank you so much.